Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. And today we're doing a little WrestleMania remix from WrestleMania VII. Really one of the forgotten great WrestleManias because it's one of those great discussions of what could have been. Of course, we've got the behind the scenes story on this incredible Sergeant Slaughter turning his back on America story. We just saw it profiled not too long ago on A&E. And of course, I took Bruce to task because as the story goes, we moved out of the Los Angeles Coliseum inside the arena for safety concerns. Was it really safety? Or was it the fact that they hadn't sold all that many tickets? The business was a changing, it was cooling down, or maybe they just didn't want to see it. But what I'm thankful that we get to talk about on this show, and maybe one of the primary reasons to remix it, is this wasn't the original plan. You see, originally, Sergeant Slaughter was going to come in and essentially just be a guy who says that America had gotten soft. And then the war broke out and, well, they leaned into it. But did you know that we almost got Chic Tugboat? Yeah, you heard that right. As first revealed by Bruce Prichard years ago here on Something To Wrestle with Bruce Prichard, Tugboat nearly wore the Chic headdress and turned on Hulk Hogan and became a bad guy. Now, as a reminder, this is after WrestleMania VI in 1990, where on the other side of WrestleMania VI and the Ultimate Warrior match, we saw Earthquake squish the Hulkster. And Tugboat was out there selling these friendship bracelets to us. I was a part of that. I was a big supporter. I was a little Hulkamaniac. But to think that we almost turned Tugboat heel, it just doesn't seem real. It also doesn't seem real that the Ultimate Warrior had maybe the best match of his career at WrestleMania back to back. A lot of people were really complimentary of his WrestleMania VI match with Hulk Hogan. And I think a lot of the credit has probably been heaped on Pat Patterson over the years for saying that he really helped them dial that match in. Most people left WrestleMania VI saying that's the best match the Ultimate Warrior ever had, only to maybe have to question that a year later at WrestleMania VII because of his match with the Macho King, Randy Savage. It was a retirement match. We're going to talk about the backstory of how Randy Savage was first talked into retirement. We know it's not going to last long. It's a wrestling retirement. Ta-da. But what a great moment it was to not only have that big moment with Randy Savage and the Ultimate Warrior in a phenomenal match, but the post match with Miss Elizabeth, man, it was awesome. It set up SummerSlam 91. Oh, and who could forget Virgil? Boy, what a big high watermark this was in his career, his feud with the $1 Million Man and all that involved. This was a big year for him. Man, we're still thinking about Virgil and, golly, I just can't believe he's gone, but what a great reveal. That we find out posthumously, dude was 11 years older than he admitted. Well, when you get a little older, maybe you got to start to, well, I'm just shameful for this. Got to start to adjust a little bit. You got to make some changes. Well, top of the morning to you. This episode is brought to you by St. Patrick's Day Shamrock Shavers, Manscaped. This year, don't just chase rainbows, make your own pot of gold and groom your little leprechaun with the leaders in below the kilt care. Say goodbye to your clover forest with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 and let your confidence shine bright. Embrace the luck of the Irish and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com and use the code STW for 20% off plus free shipping. And ever since I've used Manscaped, I can proudly say I found my pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Well, meet your new lucky charm for St. Patty's Day, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. This trimmer comes with not one, but two interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, one for a classic trim and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires. Equipped with dual LED spotlights, navigate your shamrock patch in peace. Worried you'll make a mess? Fear not, this wonder is waterproof. Shave by the misty moors, under a waterfall, or even during a rain dance. Its compact case makes it an ideal companion ready for any adventure or last minute plans. Trimming the hedges in your Irish garden isn't just for below the belt. Complete your look with Manscaped's signature Beard Hedger Pro Kit, plus the handyman electric face shaver. Whether you're sculpting your beard or cleaning up your neckline, these are always the right tools for the job. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code STW at manscaped.com. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code STW at manscaped.com. It's St. Patrick's Day. Make sure your hairy little leprechaun is luckier than ever with Manscaped. And you guys are going to be lucky this Friday because as I'm recording this, telling you later tonight, Bruce Prichard and I are recording a very special Something to Wrestle all about masked men. We're sort of picking up where we left off because you guys really enjoyed our territories conversation so much that we said, you know what, let's just let Bruce talk about masked men throughout the years. That's what we'll be talking about on the next Something to Wrestle. It's coming to you this Friday. If you haven't already, go hit the subscribe button and turn the notifications bell over on YouTube. It's somethingtowrestle.com. That's somethingtowrestle.com. But without further ado, man, it's WrestleMania season. Let's talk about it. WrestleMania VII on deck from 1991. Bruce Prichard, Something to Wrestle remix.
From the territories to Titan Towers to TNA and all points in between, he's seen and done it all. And now he's here to share the real story behind wrestling's biggest moments, controversies, and characters. The MLW Radio Network presents Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard. And with me today, of course, is the master of ceremonies, Mr. Bruce Prichard. What's going on, man?
Well, I'm the guy with.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's me. Hey, good to be here, man.
Let's get right into it, man. I'm excited about it. WrestleMania VII. I didn't think this one was going to win, but I got to admit, I'm kind of glad it did.
Well, it took us long enough to get through WrestleMania 7 just to kind of refresh our memories and watch it all over again, but it was a lot of fun, and let's get to it, man.
We hope you have as much fun as we did. It's maybe our longest show ever. It's not my favorite WrestleMania, but it is one of the more controversial WrestleManias. What happened when WrestleMania 7 went down? If you're tuning into the show to hear what type of BS answer Bruce is going to give about the move from the Coliseum to the arena, go ahead and skip to the end of the show. We're saving the best for last. That's our dessert. That's what we're going to gnaw on last, and we'll cover Iraq last. We're going to kind of go through the card and everything that's happening in the WWF first. But let's talk about it. It's WrestleMania 7, March 24th, 1991. We're in Los Angeles. It's WrestleMania 7. Lots going on in the world. The Gulf War. We're obviously going to get to that later, too. Let's get into the matches. This is an astonishingly long show, more than 3.5 hours. Of course, this year, WrestleMania was a day and a half, it felt like. The only dark matches, Coco Beware and Brooklyn Brawler. Then we get into the televised show. But before we do that, we got to mention this. I probably would have forgotten this had we not sat down and watched a few minutes of it. Willie Nelson does the national anthem, and he comes out.
America the Beautiful.
My apologies. And he comes out decked out in all kinds of gear. He's got his WrestleMania sweatshirt on. He's got a Hulk Hogan bandana on. He's got Bret Hart shades on. He's got a little replica belt on. He's all decked out. There's got to be a fun. Back in the day, around this time, you were known to have a good time. You had to have a good time with Willie Nelson there.
You ever heard of the Toby Keith song, I'll Never Smoke Weed with Willie Again?
No, and I don't know that I want to.
Well, it's a great song, and for those of you that know the lyrics to that song, I can empathize with Toby Keith. Let's just keep it to that. And the 10th floor of the Hilton in Los Angeles was a hell of a night, hell of a party with Willie. Willie's a lot of fun.
So after that, we get right into it, and the first match is the Rockers, and they're going to wrestle Barbarian and Haku. It goes about 10 minutes. This is the last WrestleMania for the Rockers. Their first WrestleMania was at 5. Obviously, this is it. After this, WrestleMania 8 would feature a singles match with Shawn Michaels. This is on the heels of the Chuck Austin injury, the enhancement talent, where he had his neck broken with a rocker dropper. Is there any sort of heat on the boys for that at this time, or no?
No. I mean, that was an unfortunate accident, and accidents happen sometimes. It sucks. But no, there was no heat.
The next match on the card is the Texas Tornado and Dino Bravo. The Texas Tornado, as you remember, is actually Kerry Von Erich, but they bill him as Texas Tornado. I'm curious. He's at one point one of the biggest stars in wrestling. Why don't you go with the Kerry Von Erich billing? You still refer to him as that occasionally, but the name on the screen, the graphic, the way he's billed is the Texas Tornado. Is that just because Vince wanted to own it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty simple. I mean, Vince saw him, and it was a name that he and Kerry came up with, and it's a name that he could market and own. So it's a lot easier to go out and market something that you own versus marketing something that somebody else owns or that someone else created.
So let me ask, is it just random and arbitrary when Ric Flair comes over? He's not billed as the Nature Boy. He's just billed as Ric Flair. So what's the rhyme or reason that goes into a decision like, okay, we're going to call him Ric Flair, but this guy, he needs a little something extra.
They call him the Nature Boy Ric Flair. They did call Kerry the Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich. They refer to him both ways, but he was brought in as the Texas Tornado. That's a name they wanted to brand. That was what they wanted to call him. So if you're going to, it's confusing when you continually refer to someone, well, he's the Texas Tornado, well, he's Kerry Von Erich.
But you create that confusion. Why don't you just call him Kerry?
You do create that confusion by going back and referring to a name that you don't own. So if you want to own a name and establish a name, then you're going to refer to him by that name. You're not going to refer to him as a name that he was known by somewhere else, where you're not going to reap the rewards from that after the fact. You'll still own Texas Tornado. You create Texas Tornado. You own that intellectual property. And that's what Vince did. That's what the WWF did. With Ric Flair, they broke that rule. With a lot of guys, they've broken that rule.
Well, that's what I was going to ask is, do you think they still try to adhere to that? Because Kevin Nash comes back as Kevin Nash now.
Sometimes they do. But the biggest pop he got is when he came back as Diesel in the Royal Rumble.
Okay. I don't want to get hot about it. Let's talk about Dino Bravo. Dino Bravo, this is last WrestleMania. French-Canadian guy, untimely demise, pretty bad situation where he ends his time with us here. The story that has made the rumors and innuendo is that he was executed in his den, had the remote control in his hand, and was involved in some sort of underworld dealings with cigarettes. Did you guys have any inclination that Dino Bravo was a connected guy? I don't know that he was a made guy, but he had some sort of shenanigans this in his life.
No, absolutely not.
Did the company?
I have no idea. Dino wasn't around. After Dino left and Dino, whether he retired or what he did, he wasn't around. So I never had any dealings with him. I didn't have the concern, frankly, of what the hell Dino Bravo was doing.
You just didn't have a relationship with him.
No, I didn't. And he wasn't around to have that relationship.
Is he the only guy you can think of that had maybe a mob-related execution in wrestling?
An alleged mob execution in wrestling? No.
Yeah. There's been more?
Allegedly.
Where the guys were shot in the back of the head?
Allegedly.
Give me another one.
Well, there's a story that has gone around about Gino Hernandez allegedly having a bullet in his head. I don't know if that's true or not. I know what we were told, what his mother was told, and what his mother shared with us, which was not that he was shot, that he overdosed.
Michael Hayes doesn't believe he overdosed.
But I don't believe he overdosed either.
Okay.
But I do know what the autopsy said, and the autopsy said he had more cocaine in his body than a human could possibly ingest. And
have you tested that before?
Have I? No, but I knew Gino very well, and I knew Gino knew his limits.
Yeah.
He partied, but he also knew his limits.
Right.
And that just didn't fit the
right.
MO, if you will. So, yeah, I mean, that's the only other one that I know of that. But I don't know that happened. I like I said, the autopsy and the official report was that he OD'd. He being Gino Hernandez.
Okay. Well, let's move along to the next match. It's the British Bulldog and the Warlord. This is the Battle of the Full Nelsons. Who booked this shit?
I was doing TV at the time. Yeah, we watched that, didn't we?
Yeah,
it was a little rough.
It was brutal. Let's run through this. Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich gets 3 minutes. British Bulldog and Warlord get 8. The next match is the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags. They take on the Hart Foundation. Have a pretty decent match for what it is. 12 minutes here for this one, and there is a title change. This is Bret Hart's last WrestleMania as a tag guy. He's going to go into WrestleMania 8 against Roddy Piper and win the Intercontinental title and have a good little push for himself, and really begins the build to the main event and to the world titles. Neidhart, of course, would then go on to do lots of other stuff. But I'm sure you've got some fun Nasty Boy stories. Ric Flair has a dozen of them. I know you've got to have a good Nasty Boy story you can share with us. I don't know when we'll talk about them again, so this is as good a chance as any.
Oh, the Nasty Boys were great. They were a lot of fun. They were there with Willie Nelson back at the hotel getting ready for that night. Imagine that. So, yeah, they were wild. They were a little crazy, but they were always good for a good time.
We kind of skipped over it a minute ago, but I wanted to mention to you or ask you, when the Rockers were taking on the much bigger tag team of Barbarian and Haku, they make it a point in their promo to say that they are tag team specialists. And then all the way throughout the match, they are constantly referred to as tag team specialists. It feels like this is the common theme whenever it's a smaller tag team taking on a bigger tag team. If it's smaller guys, you just say, well, we're tag team specialists.
Well, that was the selling point of the Rockers. They weren't necessarily as big as the other guys, and frankly stole it from the Rock and Roll Express, because the Rock and Roll Express were billed as tag team specialists. And when the Rockers came in, they were billed as tag team specialists. So it wasn't just for WrestleMania. It was for their entire career, and they were a great tag team. And
so let me ask you this,
they were specialists.
If you're stealing it from, I appreciate that you said you stole it from the Rock and Roll Express. I think a lot of people have thought for a long time that the Rockers were kind of a ripoff of the Rock and Roll Express. But at that time, if you could have them, why wouldn't you just go get them? Why wouldn't you guys have just signed the Rock and Roll Express?
Who would you rather have?
Fair enough.
There you go.
Okay. They defeat the Hart Foundation, the Nasty Boys do, rather. And so now, Bret's not obligated to be in this tag team anymore. He goes and does big, great stuff. Did you guys have any real plan for Jim Neidhart, or is he kind of, for lack of a better word, just a ship without a sail without Bret?
Well, there were plans for both guys, and you go back and you look at, was it WrestleMania 4 or 5 where we did the Battle Royal that Bret won?
That was 4.
Okay, the idea in 4 was to split up the Hart Foundation.
Okay, and here we are at 7. It's just now happening.
Here we are. Well, no, we tried it then, and it didn't work.
Bret just wasn't
way
getting
back
over.
then, and neither one of them got over on their own, and they got back together, and it just, let's try it again.
Talk to me about Jim Neidhart. Jim Neidhart has not had the best success away from wrestling, but were there any other times in wrestling that you feel like he, really did a good job? I mean, it feels like to me, Jim Neidhart's kind of peak of his career is right here, man. It's in the Hart Foundation. Even when he's tagging with Owen and he's doing other gimmicks, it just doesn't ever feel like it gets back to this point for him professionally.
Some guys are tag team guys, and the Hart Foundation, they were a great tag team.
Yeah.
And I don't know that Jim on his own was as attractive as the singles. So it's Bret shined, and Bret was able to go out on his own and get a following and do well. And Jim just needed that crutch. Jim needed somebody. He needed that workhorse in there.
Isn't it interesting that Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart's career here are really starting to parallel?
Sure.
With this being their last tag thing together, and then in the next 2 WrestleManias, they're both on their way to Intercontinental belts, and then they're on their way to the world titles in the following years. So lots of parallels. Let's get to match number 6. This is something that I was really excited to talk about as a kid. God, I just love this. Jake Roberts and Rick Martel. And a lot of this happened on the Brother Love show. And I just kind of want you to carry us through, how this all came to be. If you remember, he was Rick the Model Martel. He had a cologne he was pushing. And what did you call the contraption that kept that in?
The atomizer.
The atomizer.
That's what it's called.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not a word that I hear very often.
Arrogance.
It's a bug spray gimmick that you guys spray paint and put stickers on that says arrogance. It's pretty creative.
High-tech stuff.
Who was in control of the props at that time? Can you give credit to somebody?
You know, we didn't really have a prop guy at that time, or a magic guy at that time. That was
Wait. Did you just say magic guy?
Yes.
So WWE refers to a prop guy as a magic guy?
No, the prop guy referred to himself as the magic guy. He was an absolute genius, Richie Posner. And that's what we called his area magic.
Well, give me an idea of some magic he created.
Just everything that was out there, any special effects, any props or anything like that.
So when the ring collapsed,
he hated the word prop.
Okay.
He preferred to say he made magic, which he did. And he was a magician too by trade, and a great magician.
Okay, that explains it. I was going to say, because Carrot Top does not refer to himself as a magic comic. He's a prop comic.
Okay.
Yeah.
No. Richie was actually a magician as well, and he referred to what he did as magic. And I get it. He was great at what he did.
Well, listen.
I'll call it whatever you want me to as long as it works.
Well, there was magic in this angle, so even if he didn't make the atomizer, it was still cool.
No, I think Creative Services did.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's kind of cool. Rick Martel in these skits on the Brother Love Show is looking damn styling in these suits he's rocking and toting around some arrogance, and he sprays it in the eyes of Jake Roberts. Whose idea was this, and do you remember who would have produced it or put all this together? Does any of that ring a bell?
Well, I did the arrogance and the model vignettes and stuff. Vince and I did those. I don't remember whose idea it was. Probably, either Pat or Vince, one of the two. But it was a way to present Martel. Rick was French-Canadian, great talent, not the best talker in the world. And it was a way to get that French out of him a little bit and the arrogance, if you will, of how some people looked at the French. And just get a little bit more personality out of Rick. He was great in the ring and everything he did. Looked like $1 million. And it's another example of a gimmick that you give a guy and the talent was able to pull it off.
He does a phenomenal job here. One of the better angles, for those of you who don't remember, the arrogance gets sprayed in the eyes of Jake the Snake Roberts. He is blinded on the set.
Yeah, but all that was location because that was all on the Brother Love Show, so that's what made it great.
Absolutely. It was on Superstars, on the Brother Love Show. It's a pretty lengthy angle as far as shooting stuff, because week 1 is the blinding angle. Week 2, we see Jake at the optometrist. A couple of weeks later, we see him back on the Brother Love Show, and this time, being harassed by Rick Martel. And he's just feeling around blindly and gives Brother Love a DDT.
He sure did.
What's the trick to taking a DDT so well? Because you did a great job on that DDT.
You listen to the Snake Man and take it exactly like he tells you to. It's actually one of the simplest bumps in the world that people complicate and get hurt trying to take it different ways. If you take it like Jake has taught people to take it over the years and you do it correctly, I think it looks great. And looks like $1 million, and he'll take care of you every single time. Working with Jake and taking the DDT was a night off.
Well, in that angle where he DDTs you, the glasses slip off, and Jake has a contact in to make his eyes look white, and or maybe they are white. That arrogance really got in there and took all the pigmentation out of his eye. My apologies. And then several weeks later, Jake blindsides the guys in the middle of a match. I believe it's Tito and Martel. And because he's blind, he winds up attacking Tito. He's not sure. Couldn't see where he is. And then they do a pre-tape with Jake, a backstage interview, and then a huge pop for him. Jake was over like Rover here. And then this summer, you guys would turn him heel. Is that because he wanted to work heel? Do you remember?
Jake always wanted to work heel.
Yeah.
He was more comfortable as a heel.
Well, I think that summer is probably some of his best stuff, and I look forward to us talking about that on a future episode. But what's interesting about this match is you guys would blindfold these guys by putting bags over their head, black bags, not the type that Terry Funk put over Ric Flair's head, a Ziploc bag, but a black bag. And I didn't see it until this week when you and I, were skimming through the show. You guys had cutouts in there with black mesh, you dirty cheaters. They could really see the whole time.
I didn't see that.
This is why Meltzer calls you a lazy con man BS artist.
Yeah, well, you're the one that co-hosts with me.
That's true. So, were you watching on a monitor when this happens?
When what happens?
When this match takes place, Jake and Rick Martel, blindfold match, WrestleMania VII.
Yeah, I was a gorilla.
When you see Jake stick his hand up inside the mask.
Actually, you know what? The first time I ever saw that was with you.
Really?
Yeah.
That's the first time I noticed it, too.
Yeah.
If you go back and you look at this, right before the match starts, when the referee is securing the masks.
But it was lighting. No, and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't cut out. It was black, like pipe and drape.
Yeah, it was like a mesh.
Which you can see through fairly well. It's like having dark sunglasses on.
There was a piece cut out.
And no, if you look at it, it was mesh because the problem was he held it up to the light.
Okay.
And when you had something to look through on the other side, you could see that you could see through it.
Well,
and when it's up against skin and when it's up, it's like, it's black. It looks black and you can't tell. But when they held it up to the light, it was like, oh, crap.
This sounds like
sucks.
A terrible match, but man, it's pretty fun.
And it gets knocked all the time. Oh, my God, the blindfold match, I thought they worked it tremendously. I would always think, and I haven't watched it in years, I would always go, why are people always knocking it? And then I watched it again. I thought it was great. Just the simple psychology of Jake and pointing and using the audience to tell them where Martel was. Those two guys did a great job. It was an entertaining story in the ring. And they, if you watch the match, they didn't do a whole lot.
No.
But every single thing they did meant something.
Absolutely. Is it fair to say that Jake would have laid this out?
Probably, but I mean, it takes two to tango.
I'm not taking it from Martel.
The two of them probably got together and came up with it.
But. We just commonly hear as fans that Jake is a genius, and I don't think that was ever more evident to me than watching this match, because like you said, he knows he's the babyface. He's got the crowd on his side. So whenever he's backed up and supposedly looking for Martel, he just sticks his finger out and moves it around, and when the crowd cheers, he knows that's that direction.
The other thing he did in the middle of the match was the clap.
And so when he clapped, Martel started to come that way. The fans start to clap then. They're clued in. They're tuned in, man. And so when now there's clapping everywhere, Martel can't figure out where he is. So very, very genius stuff here. The Snake is in this match at the end. He does not look happy, and it made me curious. Do you remember any fun Snake stories from around this time?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
Can you give me one? Is that possible?
Oh, wow. There are all kinds of snake stories. That snake found its way down people's pants before and in the ring, and the more that someone knew, the more that Jake or somebody knew someone was afraid of snakes, that snake would always find its way into their presence. Jim Cornette one time jumped over a table when Jake took the snake out at gorilla position one time and tried to get it on Cornette. There was a time in Madison Square Garden where they had George the Animal Steel out with Cornette, and Jake, they were going to handcuff Cornette. Now, Cornette didn't know this.
Oh.
And they were going to handcuff Cornette to the bottom rope and put the snake on him.
What would he have been saying during this time?
Who?
What would Jim Cornette have sounded like at that moment?
God damn, put a fucking snake on me, I'll kill somebody. I'll cut that son of a bitch up and make boots out of it. I don't even wear boots. But he goes out, and the deal was Jim Myers, George the Animal Steel, was going to get Cornette and handcuff him to the bottom rope, because Myers was a tough guy. He was an amateur wrestler, and he's a tough dude. And Myers gets Cornette, gets the handcuffs on him, handcuffs him to the bottom rope. Well, they go to get the snake and go to get it on Cornette, milk it for the crowd, knowing this whole time that Cornette's got nowhere to go. He's handcuffed. Well, before you know it, Cornette is escaped and is running down the aisle and gets to the back. And we're standing there going, what happened? Well, how the hell did he slip out of the cuffs? What happened? I come back. I said, Corny, I'll kill everyone. He slipped out. I said, what happened? He goes, God damn, I got a handcuff key. He had a handcuff key in his pants and always carry a handcuff key. Like, who the hell carries a handcuff key when they're going to the ring to have a match? Who thinks in their mind, well, I don't know, maybe somebody's going to handcuff me tonight as a rib and put a snake on me. You never know what's going to happen. I always have a handcuff key in case like the cops try and get me on escape.
In case the cops try to get me, I will escape.
Whatever, I got a key.
Hang on now. Hypothetically, do you know of Jim Cornette being arrested before?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, see, I was going to say, I don't see Cornette getting arrested. I see Cornette maybe having the key for other reasons.
No comment. But it was the craziest thing. And when you hear that explanation, it's kind of like, well, okay, props. You got away. Haha, failed.
Do you think he still carries a handcuff key around?
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't put it past him.
That is phenomenal. That's way better of a snake story than
Remind me to tell you the Jim Ross car story one day, and that was a rib. That was a horrible rib, but it was a rib. And we'll tell that one day.
Okay. So
put that in your bank.
Tweet us about that one. Let's get to the next match here.
I will not address it on Twitter.
WrestleMania VII, and now this is the 7th match of the night. The 6th televised match is The Undertaker with Paul Bearer taking on Jimmy Superfly Snuka. This is Snuka's last WrestleMania. Is this kind of the end of an era here? Because for a long time, Snuka was the most over babyface there was, and then eventually second only to Hogan. And now he's on his way out, and I don't know, it just kind of feels like the end of an era for the WWF. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, Father Time. How appropriate to,
Wow.
For it to be the Undertaker to
Was that
be the one.
Did you just freestyle that right there, or was that really the story? If you say it's really the story, I'll give you like so many props if that was really the plan. Okay, so
we knew Jimmy was that would probably be Jimmy's. It wasn't. But we figured that was Jimmy's last at the time.
When you say last, you meant pay-per-view or big show?
Well, no, big show and
yeah. He did do other pay-per-views after this, but nothing like WrestleMania. How was Jimmy to deal with here? Jimmy had a little bit of a reputation for being, I don't know, erratic. I don't know the right word I'm trying to use here. He had some challenges. He had some demons. He had some issues. Here, he's easy. It's just
piece of cake.
It's just longevity, Father Time. That's
exactly
pretty much it. Okay.
Yep.
So The Undertaker, his very first WrestleMania, the beginning of the streak.
Well, we had this idea. We said, what if we could have a dead man, and every time he wrestles at WrestleMania, he never loses. And if we can only get like 25 years out of it, it'll be great.
Well, you almost made it, man. 21-1.
Yeah, but it was still 25 years, 24 years, whatever.
Yeah, that's a long time.
For those, should I go ahead and just nip that in the bud? The streak wasn't planned, folks. It was just one of those things that organically happened. And then later years when we realized, this sumbitch has a streak. Cool.
Well, and he starts it with a bang because Snuka was a really, really big deal for a long time. And later this year, he would become WWF champion. And little kids were scared at this time of him. And he debuts
Rightfully
here
so.
at WrestleMania. It's not his debut, but it's his WrestleMania debut. with a much thinned down Paul Bearer from the one we're used to. You were pretty good friends with Paul. Do you have any good Paul Bearer stories? I don't know when we'll talk about him again.
None I can tell in mixed company.
How excited was he to be a part of WrestleMania? He'd been in the wrestling business for a long time.
Percy's one of those guys that it's nice when one of the nice guys wins.
Right.
And he loved the business. He gave his life to the business. All he wanted to do was work and be a part. And so it's great when someone like that gets an opportunity like Percy got in a character that will last in the hearts and minds of people forever. So it's just cool. It's cool. Everybody, you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody, they're out there, but you'd be hard-pressed to find somebody that didn't like Bill Moody.
All right, time out right now. I love talking about old wrestling with Bruce, but the only thing Bruce and I enjoy more than talking about old wrestling, perhaps, is talking about our dogs. Those little furry, four-legged family members. Mine are Ginger and Baby. I know he's got Bean. Speaking of Bean, let me just tell you, in the description for today's episode, we've got a link we want you to click and check out Bean Fernum Schnavitz. That's right, Bruce's adopted dog. I can't believe this is a real thing, but Embark DNA might just be one of the coolest products we've ever endorsed here on the program. We've had such a fun time with this, and I want you guys to check it out. You see, with Embark, they provide the most accurate dog DNA test on the market. But really, it's the ultimate gift for every occasion. Let's be honest. We all know somebody in our life who loves their dog, whether it's your mom, your wife, your sister, your daughter, somebody you work with. If they really love their dog, they want to learn more about their dog. I mean, I know it sounds silly, but wouldn't it be cool if your dogs could talk? But they can't. So if you could learn more about their story, man, that'd be awesome. And that is what Embark DNA really does. You're going to learn your dog's breed mix. And see, Bruce does that. Bruce adopts. He doesn't shop. And so Bruce found out that Bean is actually 64.2% American Pit Bull Terrier and 22.1% Australian Cattle Dog. And how about this? 13.7% American Bulldog. Now, I know what you're thinking. Dude, I don't know anything about dog genealogy. How does that going to help me understand? Well, because they're going to tell you, hey, American Pit Bull Terriers are more susceptible to this. Australian Cattle Dogs, they really like this. American Bulldogs, watch out for this in their diet. Getting all of that info to ensure that they have the best quality life possible. I mean, they're going to do like genetic health risks where they're screening for more than 250 different ones. Not only that, we can have a little fun. You can connect with other dogs who share your dog's DNA. It's like the world's first canine relative finder. We want to thank EmbarkVet.com for supporting our show, Something to Wrestle. And if you support our show, Something to Wrestle, we want you to support Embark. Go right now to EmbarkVet.com to get free shipping and save $50 on the breed and health test when you use our promo code WRESTLE. One more time, check out EmbarkVet.com, EmbarkVet.com, and be sure to use our promo code WRESTLE. You'll save $50 and get free shipping for the breed and health test when you use our promo code WRESTLE. I'm such a big believer in this product. It is unusual, I will admit, but my mom loved it. She loved knowing, here's about how big the dog's going to get. Here's the things you need to look out for. Like Eric Bischoff on his show has told us before that his dog Nikki is predisposed to having hip dysplasia. He wouldn't have known that had he not done this. What do you not know about your dog? I love Embark. You will too. If you love your dogs, this is a no-brainer. If you know someone who loves their dogs, this is a no-brainer. This is a great gift for someone who just got a puppy. This is a great gift for someone who just likes experiences. Don't get them a gift card to freaking Longhorn. Get them an Embark DNA gift. This is really, really cool for a family who's trying to have a deeper connection with their dog, a better understanding of their dog. And you want to talk about a unique, memorable gift, a conversation starter. This is it. So get the dog DNA test that's been trusted by millions. Right now, Embark has a limited time offer on their breed and health test for our listeners. Go right now to EmbarkVet.com. You'll get free shipping and save $50 with the promo code WRESTLE. So visit EmbarkVet.com and use the promo code WRESTLE. Save $50 today.
Bill Moody is Paul Bearer's real name.
Another Alabama fellow. So roll tide on that.
Roll Tide.
So let's go ahead and let's get to, you know what, before we do, I know you said the streak wasn't planned. When do you remember that being a topic of conversation? Can you ballpark what year that would have been? This is 91. So would it have been a topic by, let's call it, when he beat Sid for the belt at 97? Would that have even been a topic 6 years in, or is it much past that?
No, probably even past that.
Ballpark. Give me an idea.
I don't even know. I couldn't pinpoint. You know, I'm terrible with dates.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't remember shit. Everybody who listens to this show knows that.
Yeah, I'm just horrible. I'm a loser.
Meltzer's not here. Calm down.
Bite me.
All right, while you think about that,
don't know.
Let's get to match number 8. This is the 7th televised match, though. The Ultimate Warrior and Randy Macho Man Savage.
Hey, finally, we're getting into something good.
We just did the blindfold match at the beginning of the streak and tag team title change and Kerry Von Erich.
All right.
Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart. So let's
the 2-match card.
Well, that's a rude comment. I notice here that, you know, and later we're revealed who it is. 2 empty seats at ringside for this entire card until right here at this match. Would that ever happen now? I mean,
God, no.
I mean, right dead center are 2 empty seats the entire night, and then for this match,
yeah, and you know what? It wouldn't happen now for several reasons. They put audience members that actually want to be there, and no, not that those guys didn't want to be there, but they're, you know, people buy those seats and they spend a lot of money.
They put the celebrities on the hard cam side.
Sure,
now.
because you know they're may not necessarily be there to watch the show, and the audience member that is there that buys those seats and pays their good money, they're not leaving those seats during the event.
Would this have been something that irked Vince back then, or was his attention to detail in other areas?
No, it definitely irked him. You hated seeing empty seats anywhere, much less in the front row right opposite hard cameras.
Right.
Now they deal with it a lot differently. They have seat fillers that if there's empty seats that are in the hard camera sections, they'll go and put people in them until the people come back with their drinks or if they're going to the bathroom or what have you.
The folks in the seats are Donald Trump and Guest. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's get back to the Ultimate Warrior, though. You guys did a really great job building this up here. If you think back to kind of how this all started, Macho Man attacks the Ultimate Warrior on main event, and then Sherry appears at the Royal Rumble during an interview segment with the Warrior and begs for a title shot for Macho Man. Later in the night, she distracts the Macho Man, or she distracts the Warrior, and Macho Man sneak attacks him during his match with Sergeant Slaughter. A few minutes later, back when they're back ringside, Macho Man really lays it in with a scepter shot on the head of the Warrior, allowing Slaughter to get the pin and become the world champion. And so they start to promote this as the first time ever for a career-ending match in the WWF. Do you remember a career match prior to this in the WWF, or is this just the first big time one on pay-per-view?
Not that I remember. It was the first one on big time pay-per-view, that's for sure.
So who pitches this idea? Do you remember?
Well, Randy was, looking to take some time off.
He's fresh on a broken thumb here. I don't know if you remember that, but he had just broken his thumb. He's got 2 pins in there. I don't recall that, but Randy was definitely looking for some time off and to take a break, and he had been running hard. And so when you say take a break, he just wanted to come off the road for a little bit and be a spokesman for the company. He wanted to do commentary, or do you remember what the real plan was at this time?
I think at the time it was to be a spokesman, but actually at the time was for him to take some time off and get away from the business for a little while and then come back and be a spokesman. And then, I don't know that it was ever necessarily one of the things I hate about stipulations like this is I don't think that it was ever really the intention that Randy was going to retire and be gone forever. There was always the thought that, well, he'll be back.
Yeah, Meltzer, I know you love this, but
Jesus,
he suggested that, maybe one of the ideas would be there would be like a letter writing campaign to get Macho Man reinstated. and you guys would request, if you'd like for him to be reinstated, send your, note to blah, blah, blah as a way to capture addresses for mailing addresses so you guys could send them catalogs and stuff and market stuff. He certainly did something like that the year before with the tugboat Hulk Hogan situation.
Yeah, definitely. We did do that.
Whose idea was that? 'Cause that's pretty genius.
Oof. I would imagine probably Vince's. I don't know.
That's a really, really great idea.
Bob Collins, Vince. I don't know.
Okay, so let's get into the match. Sherry and Macho Man are carried out on thrones for this. It's a pretty cool spectacle. Any memories of that idea, or maybe funny stories of carrying them around, maybe mishaps or guys who went on to be something like Cena was with Punk at that one WrestleMania, or DDP was for the Honky Tonk Man?
I don't think any of the guys that carried Randy out that night went on to any kind of stardom, but it was, the sedan, as we called it.
The sedan.
Yes, it was a sedan, and
it looked heavy.
It was heavy without anybody on it.
Yeah.
And then you had two human bodies on it, and it got a little tricky sometimes. And those guys were always afraid for their life that they may dump Randall or Sherry somewhere. And Randall, babies.
Warrior trunks have been a topic of debate here for a long time amongst us fans. The rumors and innuendo on the back of his trunks that night were the World Wrestling Federation heavyweight title, and the words means much more than this. And a lot of people said that was a way of taking a dig at him either not being in the main event or the title picture, or trying to stress that his match was more important. Dig or no dig?
Well, I think it's silly that anyone would even think it's a dig, because you're talking about the context of the match. You're talking about someone's career versus a championship. And giving importance to that match, his career meant more than a championship.
Right.
So it was just simply, in the context of the match, the career and the warrior and all that to him was much more important than a belt or a championship. That's all it meant.
This is the first time we saw the Ultimate Warrior wear a duster that I remember. And commentary makes a really big deal about his knee pads having a picture of Macho Man's face on one and his on the other. Is this a little bit of a ripoff of Rick Rude? Rude really made this famous, having airbrushed gear custom for the match. That's what kind of this felt like to me. Would you disagree?
I don't know I don't know. I mean,
okay, this is fun. So Sherry was decked out.
Well, I know. I mean, you're asking me, was I in Jim Hellwig's head to know that he was going to get back at Rick Rude and go to an airbrush?
I never said it was getting back at. I wanted to know if the boys thought, oh, he's doing the Rude gimmick. It was kind of his gimmick at the time.
Was he there? Was he there?
Fuck this.
Was he there?
No,
he had gone,
no.
So it wasn't his gimmick there anymore. So he wasn't there for anybody to compare to. And Rob Van Dam did it. So was Rob Van Dam a rip off of Rick Rude?
Yes.
Okay.
Glad we had this talk. Rob Van Dam didn't wear his opponent's stuff and make match specific stuff.
Okay.
All right. Never mind. This isn't so much fun sometimes. Sherry was decked out this night.
Feel my pain.
I always thought she never got her just due. What can you, as somebody who was there, testify that Sherry really meant to the matches?
Oh, Sherry was great. The boys, if you ask any of the boys who they'd rather work with, all of them would rather work with Sherry Martel. She was...
Rather than
anybody.
Okay.
You could have a match with Sherry. She'd sell and make you sell, and it'd be believable. But Sherry was a huge integral part of the Macho King and the Queen, sensational Queen Sherry. She just was great at everything she did. She added to that package. She reacted to every little thing and accented the match and didn't steal from it.
These guys would wrestle the next year at SummerSlam, and looking back at this match, I still think this particular match is the best match of the Ultimate Warrior's career. Would you agree with that?
Probably so. Probably the best match Warrior ever had.
So I want to kind of talk about some of the match. Cool spot here. Randy goes across body. Warrior catches him, but stands him up and then slaps him. It really added to the story that, Warrior's the bigger, stronger guy. And around this time, Gorilla starts really reiterating, this is the largest pay-per-view audience in the history of pay-per-view. There's no way he would have known that at that point, right? This is just a line from Vince.
I'm sorry, you're asking me to tell you what line Vince gave? No. You know what that was in reference to? Was we were broadcasting that to the troops all over the world. So the audience was the largest audience because of the number of troops and where we were broadcasting. We broadcasted it for free on the Armed Forces Radio or whatever.
Yeah.
We broadcasted it live all over the world, and so the audience was huge. As far as pay-per-view buys, no, at that time it was WrestleMania V.
We're never getting away from the way you split hairs here, just so you know.
Well, no, the audience was the largest.
I get that.
It was because we were broadcasting.
What does it sound like we're talking about right now, though? It sounds just like attendance and tickets
sold.
No,
it's that's what you choose to pull out of it. He said it was the largest pay-per-view audience, and you're saying, well, was it pay-per-view? You didn't say pay-per-view buys. So it was the largest pay-per-view audience.
How is it pay-per-view if no one's paying?
Because that's what we referred to them as.
So
that's how we referred to the events. It's a pay-per-view event.
Okay.
So because it's a pay-per-view event,
should have just been a per-view.
It was broad.
There's no pay, so he should have just said this is the largest per-view audience in the history of per-view. But it wasn't.
Yeah,
anyway.
It was.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
Sherry's wearing some super revealing stuff here, and I think around this time she started to really push the edge with some of her outfits, thongs and stuff like this. Is it fair to say this is like the precursor for the Attitude Era? There was a series of matches here where she would be stripped down to bra and panties and stuff like that, and that was kind of pushing the edge here for WWF at the time. Do you remember that being a conscious decision, and who would have been the person who says, why don't we show a little cheek here, pal?
Well, a lot of that usually was Sherry volunteering it. But I don't think there was necessarily a conscious effort to go, let's do bra and panties. As a matter of fact, it was probably the other way, kind of shying away from that.
Right.
But I know Sherry always used to like to do that. And I never liked the guys putting their hands on women anyway. In general, that's tough to sell. It's just a tough sell. I don't care where you are and what you're doing. Heel, babyface, that was always the excuse. Well, she's a heel, so it's okay to do whatever you want to, too.
Whose excuse was that?
That's everybody's excuse. It would be the talent's excuse to say, well, she's a heel. You can go ahead and get away with it. And because the audience popped, it's okay. She's a heel. It's okay. I just never liked it, but, sometimes they did it.
Warrior pushes Sherry here when they're on the outside. Pushes her pretty hard and pushes her down, and it's not even addressed at the time. So what you're saying holds water. Well, is this the first time you remember this many finishing moves being used over and over and over and it not finishing? It feels a lot like now you see guys hit a move a dozen times and then they still kick out. But back in those days, it was
unique because usually when a guy hits his finisher, that was it, and you work to the finish. And these guys wanted to do something different, and career match that they wanted to make it special and just be able to go out and make it different.
It's time for the pin now, and after all these finishing moves, Warrior wins with just a foot on the chest for the pin. Your thoughts?
Hated it. I thought it was disrespectful to Randy Savage, the performer. I thought it was disrespectful to Randy Savage, the man. I also believe that it was probably Randy Savage's call. Knowing Randy. And knowing how Randy was a firm believer of win him in the ring, lose him in the ring. You win him 1, 2, 3, you lose him 1, 2, 3, right in the middle. And I could see Randy basically anointing the Warrior and saying, you know what? Beat me, stand over me, and be the man. Because Randy knew what was coming afterwards. So it was simply simply a way to get Warrior over.
As if that's not enough, Warrior takes a victory lap around to the corners and then again comes back to the center to put a foot on the chest, this time posing with the duster on. It just seems a little disrespectful to not only pin him with one foot, but to make a victory lap, throw your shit on, and then do it again.
Well, it is to me. And I think that the talent at the time, here I am defending Warrior, I think the talent at the time, everybody knew what was going to happen next and felt that Randy was going to have his moment at the end. So get your moment now and then move on, and Randy gets his moment at the end. And it did work.
It did.
It did work. But as you and I watched it, I even told you that when we were watching it, I thought that was, it rubbed me wrong. I knew what was going to happen.
I'm curious the thinking that goes into what happens next. Sherry attacks the Macho Man after the match. She's upset that he's lost, seemingly, because of the impact it'll have on her career. And then, of course, Liz, who they showed in the crowd, a good ways away from the ring, 2 rows back down the aisle. She comes to the rescue and throws Sherry out of the ring by her hair, and the crowd goes nuts for them to reunite. Women in the crowd are crying everywhere. And then they reunite, and he embraces her, puts her up on the shoulder, and then when it's time for them to leave, he used to make her hold the ropes open for him, and this time he opens them real big for her. And the replay they show on the pay-per-view isn't of the match at all, but it's of him picking her up. So he started the match as a heel, worked as a heel, cheating and chairs and all this stuff. But then Liz comes back to him, so now he's a babyface. Has this ever happened before? It's a pretty interesting dynamic that a guy can, start as a heel and work as a heel the entire time, but because a woman likes him, he's a babyface.
Well, I mean,
it really speaks to the power of Liz.
It spoke to the power of the couple.
Mm-hmm.
It spoke to the package of Randy and Elizabeth through the years. That was a unit that, God, they were iconic. Huge heels, huge baby faces, and
Liz was never really a heel.
No, but she managed Randy as a heel, and as a package they were heels. And it just was, come on, man, they were iconic, and everyone loved Liz. She said even as a heel, they loved Liz. And it was a way to bring them back together. And what people don't know is how devoted Randy Savage was to the business and to the angle when he and Liz split on camera. Randy and Liz in real life were married and got a separation, a legal separation.
Wow.
So that if anybody, would say, oh, well, they're really married. No, they're not. That was Randy's dedication to his art and everything that he did. And Jesus Christ, why we got to do this shit? Last week we were talking about Eddie and stuff, and I told you, and I apologize, folks. The visual of Randy and Liz and Sherry all in the ring together, throw Warrior in there, and they're all gone now, was powerful. And it's even more powerful now when you sit there and you watch that and you see them, and knowing how much Randy loved Liz and vice versa, that to watch that, and you're talking about people crying, man, I cried that night, when it happened. It was a work. It was a beautiful story, but it was also those two coming back together, and it was a beautiful story. And it was what it was, but it worked, and onward and upward.
What do you think made Liz so special? There's never really been a character like her since.
She's quiet, classy. Didn't have to say a lot, didn't say a lot. And she was a beautiful woman, but she also was like that girl next door. So I think she was really relatable and easy to like.
This seems like the time when you guys would have taken an intermission. I don't know that it was acknowledged as an intermission. I'm curious, why the hell did WrestleMania used to have an intermission?
You know, back in the old days, WrestleMania 1, 2, 3, you know, they used to take intermissions on pay-per-view even.
Yeah.
And this was back when you thought you have to have an intermission. You know, you got to sell gimmicks. You got to give people a chance to go get popcorn and something to drink and go to the bathroom. So it was just a mainstay of a live event and a pay-per-view event. Got to give people a chance to go do what they want to do. It was a different time. But what we did for the television audience was we had interviews and stuff with the celebrities that filled that time. Well, in the house for the live event, it was an intermission.
So
it was a long show. It also gives the announcers time to go take a piss. And
so this intermission period here, this is kind of famous, you know, when you did it for house shows and live events, because this would be the Hulk Hogan spot a lot of times, where you would have a really good match as the last match on the card, but Hogan would work right before the intermission, the rumor being so he could get back to the hotel and do his room service and all that, and beat the fans out of the crowd and beat the traffic and not be mobbed and yada, yada, yada.
No, folks, it was when you're going to do a return so that you could have
tickets
whatever you're going to do, and you can come back and announce the return off of an angle that you would shoot in that match. And then when you come back for the return, if it was the blow-off, it would be the last match. But no, it wasn't so he could go back and get room service.
Well, he used to say it is. So
well, I'm sure that's what he did. But that wasn't why he was put in that spot.
So he didn't request to be in that spot, you don't think?
He was put. I just explained why he was put in that spot.
Okay. When
we had a hot match that we were the exact same reason why Warrior and Andre the Giant were put on in that spot when we were going to do the return. They were put in that spot so you could come back later on and announce, next time that we are here in the Von Braun Civic Center, it will be one-on-one, and you announce the return off of the angle you shot earlier in the night.
All right.
And then they come back. It wasn't so, well, you know what? Room service stops at 8. We need to get those guys out of here so they can get their egg whites.
The first match back after intermission has a nickname that I've heard. Can you share that?
Popcorn match.
Explain to our listeners who may not be familiar why it's the popcorn match.
Because people went out to get popcorn and they're coming back from getting their popcorn.
What type of match would usually be in the popcorn match position?
A slower starting match. One that's going to build, put a little time in, get people back to their seats.
And the match chosen here is, well, let's talk about intermission first. They have The Undertaker measuring Regis with a tape measure. This is pretty fun stuff. Then there's the Demolition promo. By this point, Bill 80 is gone. It's just Crush and Smash here. They're really winding things up. There wouldn't be much more traction to Demolition. This is their last WrestleMania. And then they interview their opponents, which are Tenru and Katao. I say Katao right?
Yep.
And maybe a little racist here because Regis is trying to communicate with these guys who don't speak any English, but they acknowledge Toyota and Isuzu. Could they get away with that now?
I doubt it.
It's pretty amazing. This Demolition match seems a little out of place. I mean, it's just kind of out of nowhere. How do you guys come to this to be a WrestleMania match? And Demolition loses. This is the first time I remember seeing a power bomb in the WWF. I'm probably wrong on that, but it's the first time I remember seeing it. Demolition's done in September of this year, I believe. And they lose to Tenru and Katao in 4 minutes. Do you remember, I know you guys had some sort of SWS working agreement, and it feels like WCW at this time is playing Follow the Leader. They're doing some stuff with New Japan. And a few months after this, you would have a huge show with these guys. I think Tenryu tagged with Hogan against LOD, and you guys had like record ticket prices and made a huge gate in Japan. But I don't really hear about that going on much further. What happened here?
Well, that's simply it. We had a working relationship with Tenryu. Tenryu was starting his own company in Japan. Koji Kitao was a sumo wrestler that had turned pro, and they wanted to make him an international star. So he is in Japan. He's portrayed as so big that he's got this big match with another Japanese superstar, Tenryu, who was a big name in Japan, to come over to America and be in WrestleMania. It's just simply a working relationship, put a good light on them, and we were going to Japan. So it was a way to just strengthen that agreement with them. And it was more, that particular segment, that particular match was more important to Japan than it was per se to the show or really have any meaning in WrestleMania. But internationally in Japan, it had a lot of meaning.
Before we talk about the Kitao situation, why is Demolition winding up? Like, at one point, Demolition's pretty damn over. What do you think changed? When Crush was interjected, it wasn't the same? Or it was just time?
Well, it's just time. I mean, it's like, I love it when people say, well, why'd you guys, the dream, baby, it's just getting hot. You're going to cut it off. But everything runs its course. You can't have Demolition be the dominant tag team forever. There comes a time that you got to bring something new in.
Yeah.
It's their time. That hell of a run. It's just their time.
Well, it looks like their time is up. We can't see them. Katao's time is now. Kitao, famous maybe, I don't know when we'll talk about it again, for trying to shoot on Earthquake later this year at the Japanese show that we referenced a minute ago. So when WWF at the time goes to Japan, they match these two guys up. Probably because John Tenta was a pretty successful sumo and had some real name recognition in that sport. And since Kitao is kind of the man over there for that, this is a natural fit. But then in the match, he kind of goes in business for himself. It's on YouTube if you'd like to see it. Do you have any memories of that? Because I don't know when we'll ever talk about that again.
No, I just remember when it happened. And
were you at that show?
Nope. But Earthquake John Tenta was a big sumo name over there. Kitao was a young sumo, had been a big name. And it was young versus new. And Kitao.
You mean young versus old or new?
Young versus yeah, young versus old. But Tenta wasn't that old. He looked like it because he was balding, but Tenta still had it. And Kitao wanted to test the old timer, and Katao's the one that left the ring. And
when he rolls out of the ring after shooting on him, he picks up a mic and in Japanese says something like "wrestling is fake," and is essentially.
But he didn't want to get back in there with the fake wrestler.
Never got back in there and never wrestled again. Was essentially blackballed from wrestling after that. So this is his last WrestleMania too.
Yes, it was.
WrestleMania continues. We go to match number 10 on the card. Number 9 on television. The Big Boss Man is going to take on Mr. Perfect here for the Intercontinental title. And this is an interesting match to me because the Big Boss Man looked better than ever for this one.
Both guys did.
Yeah, really an entertaining match. Do you have any memories of this one?
It was just a great match. It had been built up with Bobby Heenan insulting the Big Boss Man's mom. And we shot some very entertaining vignettes about Mrs. Boss Man. She was a good sport. And culminating here. Perfect Intercontinental Champion. It was bringing Andre back out to kind of avenge breaking up with Heenan and anointing the Big Boss Man. It was a hell of a match. It was really a great match.
Real quick, I want to dig into a little bit more about the Big Boss Man. He's in phenomenal shape here. Why didn't he get more of a push? It seems like he debuted and Well, you're fired up at it, but I mean, he debuted and then goes on some successful loops with Hogan on house shows, even some cage matches, and then he does some tag stuff with Akeem. But he gets himself in great shape here. He's super over. He doesn't get the win, and he's programmed with the Mountie at SummerSlam. What would have been the harm in giving him a title run?
A push. Jesus, that's a hell of a push. You come in, you work with the top guy, Hogan. Hell of a push. You're put right on top.
Yeah,
with the top guy. Then from there, you go on and you form a tag team and you work with the two top guys, Hogan and Savage. You go around. Boss Man had a hell of a run. Great push.
But my point is,
you can't just push everybody all at the same time. The spotlight is only so big. So, Boss Man had a hell of a run. He comes out of here with a victory. He didn't win the title, but he came out with a victory. He came out on top. He comes out with Andre anointing him and raising his hand. It's not always about, well, he didn't have the belt.
Well, I'm just saying that because during this run, what?
The belt is a prop.
Are you serious right now?
I'm sorry. Do you want me to say the belt is magic?
Well, a few minutes ago, when I said Jake had a white contact in, you got half hot about it. And now you're referring to the Intercontinental Championship title belt.
Is a prop.
Made by Reggie Parks. That's a prop.
It's a prop. Yes. Believe it or not, they're a prop.
I don't know what to say to you anymore.
Sure you do. You'll think of something.
Andre the Giant comes out in this match. This is the first WrestleMania where he wasn't advertised that I can recall. I assume he had been having some injury situations in his life. This is the last WrestleMania appearance for him. And I'm curious, if he would have been able to work, did you guys have a plan for what the match would have been? He does some physical.
He wasn't a part of it. He wasn't necessarily a part of it. The storyline was the breakup with Heenan, and then going on after WrestleMania to have the managers wooing him. That's all it was.
So is his appearance here just to continue the Bobby Heenan storyline, or is it to just add some added value to the viewer that, hey, they got to see Andre the Giant? Is it to get him a WrestleMania payday? All the above?
It was a part of the story. It was all the above. He was a part of the story. And
was he able to work here? I guess what I'm getting at is why not give him a match, even if you put him in a tag match?
Again, the story was Boss Man and Perfect, and there was a sub story with Andre and Heenan, and it was a way to make all of them work in without having to give him a match. And he wasn't in the best health, so I don't know how much of a match he really could have worked.
The next match on the card, Bobby Heenan is involved in this one, and Mr. Perfect's got his working boots on. If you haven't seen this match in a long time, you should go check it out. It's a pretty decent match. It runs about 10 minutes. But Perfect, man, he is just all over the place with crazy dramatic bumps. I can't help but wonder, what did Vince think of some of these over-the-top Kurt Hennig sales? Is this something that would have pissed him off, annoyed him, or would he found humor in it? Because he's clearly doing it to be funny.
Well, no, I mean, that was Kurt's way of working, and Kurt was a bump machine, and it just simply, as far as Vince's reaction, you have to ask him what he thought of it, but it would probably depend on who it was, the timing, and who he was working with.
Weird thing in this match worth mentioning, too. Boss Man's working Perfect. The referee's Joey Morella. On commentaries, Lord Alfred Hayes and Gorilla Monsoon. Everyone's gone. Is that weird to see? Doesn't feel like that should be the case.
Yeah, sucked. I mean, it's just one of those things that, and yeah, it's sad. Those guys you travel up and down the road with and spend a lot of time with. So yeah, it's. I'm getting old.
You have a lot of impressions. Do you do a Big Boss Man?
No.
Jim Cornette does a Big Boss Man, and let me just say, Jim Cornette's Big Boss Man is identical to your Jim Cornette.
God damn. Double cheeseburger, double cheese, extra mayo, extra onion. Get it right, I'm gonna kill somebody.
It's like a foul mouthed Mickey Mouse. Match number 11, number 10 on the card, that was televised. Earthquake takes on Greg the Hammer Valentine. They don't get very much time at all. They're only in there for about 3 minutes. What's the point of this match?
Get guys on the card.
Okay, let's move along. The Legion of Doom, Hawk and Animal, two of the biggest attractions in the history of wrestling, take on Power and Glory, Hercules and Paul Roma. And the Legion of Doom wins in 59 seconds.
There you go.
Is this a waste?
Well, I got Legion of Doom exposure, got him out there, got him a win on WrestleMania. Why is that a waste?
Well, it just seems like, I know
Would you rather him not be on the show?
Well, I'm just saying, British Bulldog and Warlord got 8 minutes.
They were in a program. It was a blow-off. This was a way to get Legion of Doom out there and get him exposure, get him a big win at WrestleMania.
Legion of Doom supposedly are having some issues with their contract at this time. Does any of that ring a bell?
No.
That's rumors and innuendo, obviously. But the rumor and innuendo is that they're just not really happy with their spot on the card or their pay or both. And, they're not early in the show. They're late in the show, but they're 59 seconds in. Nothing? Got nothing on that?
So they go out and they destroy their opponents in 59 seconds, and they're upset about that.
I'm just asking.
I don't recall them being upset. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't recall that. But I don't know what they'd be upset about being on the show. And the alternative is not being on the show, not having 59 seconds, not having any seconds. And
the guy,
should they have been second wait a minute, no, number 2 where Texas Tornado was? I'm asking.
Well, here's my question. These guys were main event attractions for Crockett and did big business down there, and were in cage matches last with Dusty and Flair and the Horsemen, and now they're wrestling Paul Roma and Hercules, and you're acting like that's okay. So, just wanted to give you a chance to.
Again, it's like, well, everybody should be in the main event. There's one main event.
I'm not arguing that they should be in the main event. Here's what I'm saying.
In this case, there were 2 main events.
I'm not arguing any of that.
15 matches.
What's wrong with Demolition LOD here?
They'd already had Demolition LOD. The program was over.
Okay.
But they had already had a program. They'd already gone through Demolition. They'd already worked with them.
Why wouldn't you have saved it for WrestleMania and made it a bigger deal?
Again, you can't save everything for WrestleMania. You got to have attractions other times during the year. So it's not all, well, every match should have been the main event of WrestleMania. It doesn't work that way. You got to tell stories. You got to draw houses during the rest of the year too. So there was a story. They had their run with Demolition. It goes back to the old, well, why didn't they do Flair and Hogan?
Do you think if you guys built a card worth of shit, you wouldn't have had to move it from the Coliseum to the arena? We'll come back to that. Let's go to match number 12 that was televised. Virgil with Roddy Piper. How's that for a pairing? Defeated Ted DiBiase by countout. I don't remember seeing a WrestleMania win by countout. I'm sure it's happened, but none come to mind right off the top of my head. This is a big angle. You guys did a really, really good job building this one, I thought. No music for Virgil because Piper managed him. I'm not exactly sure why Piper was here except to build the angle right after.
There you go. Ding, 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 ding.
It just seems hodgepodge, but, whatever. Count out win for Virgil as Ted attacks Piper. Sherry then attacks Piper and sides with Ted, and then they beat on Piper's hurt leg. He came out with a brace on and limping. And then, of course, Virgil pleads with Piper to get up on the hurt leg and carries him out. Is this Virgil's highlight of his career? Is this like the pinnacle for
Probably
Virgil?
so.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably so. That's about as high as Virgil was going to get.
Do you remember what type of fuck money he got for this?
I don't.
Do you reckon that afterwards he celebrated at the Olive Garden?
I would imagine so. Do they even have Olive Garden then?
Oh, yeah. That's selling breadsticks. That's been the shit for a long time.
Okay.
I just read a report that America is now in more credit card debt than ever before, more than $1.1 trillion. You know, my grandfather used to say, there's no stress like money stress, son. Well, are you feeling that right now? Let me help. You've got a friend in the mortgage business in me, and I've helped families just like yours save hundreds of dollars a month. Seriously, we've helped listeners to this podcast save up to $800 a month. At savewithconrad.com, we routinely help our podcast listeners consolidate all of their high interest rate credit cards into just one much lower monthly payment. Would you like to lower your monthly payments? Wouldn't it be nice to skip your next 2 house payments? Are you finally ready for some breathing room and peace of mind? Start saving money today with your friend in the mortgage business, me, at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket. And if we can't help you save some cash, we won't waste your time. You see, at savewithconrad.com, we don't say no. We say not yet, but here's how. We want to be your mortgage advisor for life. So find out how easy it is to finally get rid of your credit card debt once and for all, get a much lower monthly payment, and even skip your next 2 house payments. Let's find out how much money you can save for free at savewithconrad.com. NMLS number 32416, equal housing lender, savewithconrad.com.
Meat sauce, baby. Okay. The locker room sets were all over for the backstage interviews, and I've always been fascinated by these. It was kind of a staple at the time, these famous locker room backgrounds. There's a payphone, and I think there's a couple of different sets here, and you've told me before that you maybe had a hand in that. Can you kind of lay out what that is? Or did just every locker room you guys had in the 80s and 90s look identical?
Yeah, that was a hell of a coincidence.
It really was.
No, we had basically your heel locker room set and your babyface locker room set. One was pink, one was blue.
Oh, I didn't notice that. I'm colorblind.
Yeah.
So I didn't notice that. So it wasn't like pink was pink for the girls?
No,
or
pink was for heels. Pinks for heels.
Okay.
Baby faces are blue.
Well, you know.
Conrad.
Now let's get into the Mountie and Tito Santana. These guys had a barn burner of a match for about a minute. Whose idea was the Mountie? I'm pretty excited about the Mountie character, and I realize I'm probably in the minority, but the
Mountie was great.
I enjoyed the Mountie. Do you remember who came up with the gimmick? He was great at it.
Well, we had a box, and it's at prowrestlingtees.com/Bruce Prichard, box of gimmicks. And we reached in and pulled out, and there was a Mountie hat in there. Jacques' brother Raymond had, I don't want to say retired, but he basically semi-retired and was doing commentary for us, color commentary for us in Montreal. And Raymond had other businesses, and Raymond, another wonderful guy, that it was an opportunity, Jacques going out on his own and give him new life and a new character, and came up with the Mountie and look at, you know, how Americans view foreigners, which we'll be getting into next. And no matter where they were, but it was a way to, it had a lot of heat in Canada. It had a lot of heat everywhere, but it had a lot of heat in Canada because the Royal Canadian Mounted Police felt that we were making light of the Mounties.
Right.
And Jacques had a lot of heat with that. But it was just, you know, a gimmick. No different than the Big Boss Man.
And he did a phenomenal job with it.
Oh, it was great.
Is the theme of this pay-per-view, you know, card quantity over quality? I'm not saying that to be a dick.
Hindsight being 20/20, yeah.
I mean, there's just so many short matches and so many guys and so many matches. It feels
you forget about it, and I'm exhausted
just talking
about it.
Well, let's we're gonna get
because as you get into it, the sell of this card were 2 matches.
Yeah,
Warrior and Savage, Hogan and Slaughter.
Right. Well, and Jake and Martel. Come on, blindfold match was awesome.
That's true. It was awesome. Perfect and Boss Man was awesome.
All right, let's talk about it. There were some celebrities who were here but there were some celebrities who backed out, or so the rumors and innuendo would have you to believe. The two empty seats we talked about earlier in the front were Donald Trump. Donald Trump was there because Marla Maples was there. And, roll tide on that, right?
Yeah, they were dating.
Yeah, so Trump's there. Chuck Norris is there. He's interviewed on camera. Lou Ferrigno, Henry Winkler. Alex Trebek replaces Bob Costas, or so we've been led to believe. Bob Costas had some sort of quote that said it wouldn't be in the best taste or something like that, and pulled out. He had been, and was later, a WWF proponent, but seemingly backs out here because of the perceived controversy of the Iraq War. Rumors and innuendo would also lead you to believe that Roseanne Barr and Tom Arnold, who are a pretty big deal around this time, are supposedly supposed to be there, and being in Los Angeles, that makes sense. But they back out too. Do you remember what their plans would have been for them at WrestleMania? Was it just to say hi and bye, or would Roseanne have done something?
No,
She was pretty hot at the time.
No, it was strictly to be like guest ring announcers and stuff like that, guest interviewer, things like that. I do remember Costas. I don't remember in that particular instance Roseanne and Tom Arnold. I do, but I don't. You know what I mean?
Right.
It was simply they would have been, guest timekeeper, no different than what Trebek and Regis and Marla did.
So,
celebrities on the fringe.
Let's talk about the Iraq stuff. This wasn't the original plan for WrestleMania 7. So, talk to me a little bit about where this idea first comes from. You know it's WrestleMania, so you know Hulk Hogan's figured in big, but you revealed it before what the original idea was, and I don't think that we've really expounded on that here on your show. Kind of lay that out for everybody.
Well, the original idea was...
Let's set the backstory. It's summer 1990. Earthquake attacks Hulk Hogan, gives Hogan some time off TV. He's going to go film Suburban Commando, I think. Is that right?
I think that was the one, yeah.
So he films Suburban Commando, which actually comes out a couple months after WrestleMania 7, so that timeline lines up. And he does the chest finish, the sit-down gimmick on Hogan, and then Hogan's out, and he's off TV, and there's a new character, Tugboat, is introduced, and he is Hogan's pal, and he's going to try to come to the rescue and help him, and they're doing these bracelets, and you can get one of these bracelets if you'll just write in and blah, 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 and you're supporting your Hulkster, and they're showing all these letters that are coming in. You guys are doing an address capture campaign, which is pretty amazing. People do it with email and text message numbers now, but back then snail mail was the deal. And
got to build that mailing list.
And so it builds to SummerSlam 1990, which is Earthquake versus Hulk Hogan in Philadelphia. And the seeds are starting to be planted. What was the original plan for WrestleMania 7?
The original plan was we had Sarge coming back, and we had Adnan Al-KC, and there was turmoil in the Middle East with Iraq and what have you, and Iraq being invaded, Kuwait being invaded by Iraq. And the idea was that Hulk Hogan's good new best friend, Tugboat, would turn his back on America and the Hulkster and adopt the ways of the Middle East and be chic Tugboat against the All-American, the real American, Hulk Hogan.
How would Slaughter have been figured into that?
Well, Sarge was going to kind of be, peripheral character at the time. There was the idea to do chic Tugboat was before Sarge came in. Sarge came back right before SummerSlam, I believe. We did the Great American Sergeant Slaughter Award. So this idea was even before that. So we'd taken Hogan out after WrestleMania sometime, and then Hogan was coming back at SummerSlam. But in the meantime, the idea was that it would be Tugboat that would be the one to lead that charge, and Tugboat be his friend, and that Tugboat would be the one that would eventually turn. Along the way, Sarge comes back.
Fresh off his G.I. Joe deal.
Yep. And Sarge comes back, and it's like, well, what if the real American hero, G.I. Joe, Sergeant Slaughter, turned his back on America and the real American Hulk Hogan? So thank God for Sergeant Slaughter coming back when he did and stepping into that role. But the build-up was one of Sarge being an Iraqi sympathizer, and
Wait, hang on. Why would Vince have picked Tugboat?
because he was a big, huge guy and humongous arms and big pythons, if you will, and they just saw
A monster.
a monster, yeah, and it was a big monster for Hogan to destroy when it came time. Big guy to beat. So like to create monsters for the Hulkster.
So an audible is called at this point, and for whatever reason.
Well, thank God we hadn't got into the turn.
But y'all had already started to do some teases.
Well,
right?
we had done the teases with Tugboat being the one to bring Hulk back and everything. Man, Tugboat and Hogan teamed at Survivor Series. We were kind of already that ship had sailed, so to speak. But Sarge coming in when he did, and being that Iraqi sympathizer, it was just topical. It was what had been done in the business for eons. You take the foreign menace. We were at war with Germany, and after the war in Germany, the heels were all Germans. And after the war in Japan, all the heels were Japanese and threw salt. Well, we hadn't gone to war yet, but you had a hell of a heel over in Iraq by the name of Saddam Hussein that everybody hated and was on the news every week. So why not have an Iraqi sympathizer? And what's worse than having an Iraqi in General Adnan, but to have an American, a G.I. Joe that represented everything that was right in America, an American hero, and Sergeant Slaughter, turn his back on his own country. And that was the thought process. And to go to Mania, the real American versus the American turncoat. And this was obviously before things escalated in the Middle East.
Well, but you were still kind of building this pay-per-view around a real-life conflict.
Always did. They always built things around real-life conflicts. World War II was a real-life conflict.
Well, hang on. You said they right there. This is you.
This isn't me personally.
Oh, you personally were there.
Yeah, I was personally there, and yeah, I was behind it. And I definitely did support it. And it's what they had done. The Hollywood, wrestling, historically, took foreigners and made them heels and bad guys. And you propped up your American heroes. And that's exactly what we were doing.
What was
and before that, before we even necessarily, before we even had conflict in Iraq, we had booked, because the Los Angeles Coliseum had approached us about coming in and holding the event in the Los Angeles Coliseum, which held over 100,000 people. And we went out there, we flew out there, they had a huge presentation, they set a ring up on the 50-yard line, and they had the big screens up, they had put seats on the field around it, and had
they did a big
cameras
sell.
out. Oh, they had a huge sell. I mean, they had, WrestleMania VII up on the scoreboard, and they had video, so that when we walked in, we were up on the big screen and stuff. They had this beautiful luncheon for us. And that was God, I want to say it was right after or right before. Well, it was right before WrestleMania 6. And because we had done 6 in Toronto, and this was going to be bigger than 6.
Right.
So we had been out there and done the tour, made the decision, okay, we'll do this. And then as time went on, it was like, well, take Hulk's best friend, tugboat, and, do the turn and triumphant return of the Hulkster.
WrestleMania 6 ran a promo for tickets being on sale at the Coliseum. And if you go back and watch it on the network, that promo has been erased. It is not there. Before we get into what happened there, did you guys think that this Iraqi concept would draw 100,000 people?
Well, first of all, there was no Iraqi concept when we booked the Coliseum.
So what would you think a year out?
Well, you're sitting there trying to figure that out. You know it's going to be Hulk, and I think in Vince's mind, he had this tugboat thing, and then his Iraqi thing started going on. Well, what if we made him an anti-American? So it wasn't.
So it was
in March or February of the year before. They would go, we're going to go to war with Iraq. We're going to have an Iraqi sympathizer.
Okay, so the plan to sell 100,000 seats was Tugboat and Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
That one didn't work.
No.
Was WrestleMania 6 a disappointment? Do you think some of the decline starts with WrestleMania 6 based on it being babyface, and it not having...
I don't think the event was a disappointment at all.
You don't think... I mean, I'm just asking, were buys down for that? It was reported that buys were down for that.
Well, buys were down from WrestleMania 5, yeah. But I don't think it was a disappointment.
So it was less about Warrior Hogan and more about how bad it was, and more about how great WrestleMania 5 was with Macho and Hogan.
Maybe
and how masterful the build was.
I just think that the babyface attraction
didn't work as well.
Maybe didn't work. Well, obviously it didn't work as well as the other one, but that's hindsight.
So then you come back and you're planning to do Tugboat, and along the way.
Yeah, and along the way, Sarge comes available. Tensions heat up. You got.
Does Sarge call y'all, or do you call Sarge? Do you call?
Sarge called us.
And he's fresh off the G.I. Joe thing. That was a big deal.
Yep, and Sarge was looking, and he and Vince had a falling out before, but Sarge called, and I
remember what that falling out was about?
It was about the G.I. Joe contract, I believe.
He didn't want him to do it?
Vince didn't want him to do it, no, and Vince wanted to have a piece of it. And Sarge, went off and did his own thing.
I see.
So Sarge was arguably as big, if not bigger, than Hogan at that time.
Absolutely.
So, it was disagreement. Shit happens all the time. But it was opportunity for him to come back. He came back. He was red hot. I mean, he was red hot.
Did he want to be a heel, or did you?
He loved the idea.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Whose idea was it to? Do you remember it like sitting around the pool and?
Again, a lot of that was. That part of it was a lot Pat and Vince at that time, and I was doing TV, so I was in after the fact, and You
told me something about
television,
and one of the most iconic things here is I guess you guys soaked a Hulkamania T-shirt in lighter fluid and then had Sarge.
Well, that was down the way.
Light it.
That was closer to the match itself.
Was there discussion about anything else there?
Yeah. There sure was, but I mean, you gotta, before we get to that, and I know where you want to go with that, but getting to that point, we had Sarge and we had Adnan, and this surge from underneath and the animosity towards Sergeant Slaughter and Adnan was growing, and
let's talk about Adnan for a minute. We've just kind of glossed over him. Tell everybody who Adnan really is. I don't think a lot of people... I mean, he just kind of appears out of nowhere, and he's in WWF programming, but he has an interesting backstory.
Yeah, he's Adnan al-KC. That's his real name. And he's from Iraq. He grew up with Saddam Hussein.
Wow.
And they were childhood, neighbors, friends, what have you, went to school together. And so he was a legit Iraqi, legit knew Saddam Hussein, and... it wrote itself
Right.
In a lot of respects. And in our lifetime, we had never, I didn't, you didn't, we'd never experienced war. We experienced the Vietnam War, but we had not declared war on Vietnam.
I didn't. I'm not as old as you. Shut up.
Okay, I'm sorry. I forgot. Okay, I did. But we had never declared war on a country.
Right.
At that point, for me in my lifetime. I read about it. I was alive during the Vietnam War. So the thought of going to war was unprecedented. We never dreamed in a million years we'd actually go to war. Thought, well, there's a skirmish. There's a dispute. This guy's an asshole over here in Iraq. Well, let's have an Iraqi sympathizer. It's a heel. It's what we've done for years.
Well,
and we went with it, and it was getting over. People were booing the shit out of him, and it was building. And we had a red hot, honest to God, red hot, white hot heel in Sergeant Slaughter and Adnan. So you got a white hot heel, you got a white hot babyface in Hogan. The two shall collide. What happens if along the way that red hot heel takes the most coveted prize, being the WWF Championship?
So you don't think that this was in poor taste?
It wasn't in poor taste when it started. No, it wasn't. Not at all.
Even though not here in, go ahead. Even though not here in America, but over there, people were losing their lives. It wasn't in poor taste.
What do you mean people were losing their lives? People in Iraq and Kuwait, when Iraq was invading Kuwait?
Right.
Well, they hadn't really done that all yet. It was a skirmish. There was
skirmishes don't involve death.
So what you're saying is it's in poor taste to ever portray something that is controversial.
Well, hey, let's run through it. Do you see people rioting on WWE TV now?
I'm saying at the time.
I'm saying at the time now.
I'm saying at the time. No, we're not talking about now. We're talking about at the time. And at the time, if people were rioting and doing like they are now, yeah, they probably would have exploited that.
And would it have been right to do so?
I don't know if it would have been. It was what it was.
I'm asking.
It was entertainment. In the name of entertainment, you take what is hot. You take what is in the culture at the time, and you exploit it. Is it right for Hollywood to do movies about it? Is that right? We're no different than Hollywood. It was make-believe. Sergeant Slaughter wasn't a real Iraqi sympathizer. So is it in poor taste for Hollywood to go out and do a movie about a real-life sniper who was killing people in the Gulf War? Is that right?
Well, that's a documentary.
No, it wasn't a documentary. It was an entertainment movie starring, what the hell's his name from The Hangover? It was an entertainment movie.
I
That's all it was.
Yeah.
It was for entertainment purposes. This was for entertainment purposes. So if what you're saying that's in poor taste, then Hollywood's in poor taste. Television is in poor taste. Entertainment is in poor taste. We were simply mirroring society and what was going on at the time and exploiting that, no different than what other people did.
Was American Sniper aimed at children, and did they sell dolls?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's aimed towards people. And yes, it's entertainment. And if it's in poor taste to do entertainment based on real life things, then it was in poor taste. But when you're in the moment and you do what you've always done, and you can look back 20 years ago, go, well, that was really in poor taste because people were getting killed. People are getting killed every day.
Here's what I don't understand. Why are you defending this so hard when Bob Costas?
Because
am I allowed to
I don't care about Bob Costas. I'm defending it hard.
USO.
Roseanne Barr is a standard bearer now for good taste.
No, I'm just saying people are backing out here, and America was turned off a little bit because.
But you're talking about things, and again, we're not even there yet. You're talking about things that took place after the United States of America declared war on Iraq.
Yeah, you guys
so
still
you're
had
jumping
the fucking
way ahead.
pay-per-view.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah,
they still had a Super Bowl.
They didn't have fake Iraqis in the Super Bowl.
Where the fuck are you going with this?
Well, I'm going with I don't understand why nobody.
So we should have canceled the event.
Let me ask you this.
Well, hang on. I'm asking you a question. Should we have canceled the event?
You shouldn't have went with...
Should we have canceled the event?
Should have canceled that match.
Okay, so we should just scrap everything we did and cancel the match.
Yeah, it was in poor taste.
Okay, so every time that something in poor taste happened, we should have just canceled everything.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad we had this talk.
Okay.
Do you remember any of the Office speaking up or taking issue with this angle, or was everybody as fucking brainwashed and drinking the Kool-Aid as you were?
Well, I'm not brainwashed and drinking the Kool-Aid. You weren't there. People weren't there making decisions, and you're making decisions, and yeah, it affects a lot of people's lives and their livelihoods. And yes, lives were. But again, when you're talking in August, before war breaks out, and you're looking at things and you're going, well, this is how we've always done it, and this is what's hot, and it's no different than what everybody else does, what Archie Bunker did on All in the Family, a comedy show, that...
They didn't sell tickets to Archie Bunker.
They sold advertising to Archie Bunker.
Yeah, I understand. This is a different time. You're talking. Archie Bunker wasn't on the air in '91.
Of course, it's a different time than where we are now.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that you simply had a situation where you're going into it and the whole situation changes. Everything changes.
But WWF doesn't. They stay the course.
No, we changed a lot.
What'd you change?
We didn't burn a flag that was
Okay.
suggested by Jesse Ventura that we do because it became legal.
This is around the same
some-
time Jesse Ventura becomes mayor, by the way. And his suggestion, yeah, he was made mayor earlier in this same year, Brooklyn Park, Minnesota.
Jesse had left by then when he became mayor, didn't he?
Yeah, he's not here
Yeah.
then.
Yeah, but he was the one that suggested when the American flag became legal to burn the American flag that we burn an American flag
And
because it was legal.
And you decided.
And out of good taste, we didn't.
So instead, the pitch was
Pitch was what?
not to burn an American flag, but instead,
Well, later on when we got to the point right before the match, instead of burning an American flag, we burned the symbol of America, a Hulk Hogan T-shirt.
soaked it in lighter fluid, I hope, because I wore that around school.
We actually no, not lighter fluid. We soaked it in sterno.
I don't even know what that is.
Of course you don't. You ignorant hillbilly southerner.
Well, I do mortgages. I don't have a...
Sterno is the little fire things that they put under...
Oh, yeah. Catering and stuff, yeah. I got you.
Sterno on it.
Yeah. Well, I just knew it as the little fire thing under the catering thing.
That's called sterno.
Okay, good to know. This is just going to get you fucking fired up. Meltzer says
God.
the Iraqi embassy wanted the WWF...
We're going to ban that word. From now on, folks, whenever you hear beep, it'll be because of the word that he just said.
Okay. Beep says the Iraqi embassy wanted the WWF to stop using the name Saddam Hussein to associate with Sergeant Slaughter. Do you remember that request coming in?
No, but I don't doubt it came in.
Where was
I don't remember. I mean, yeah, I don't remember that.
Where was Sheiky Baby during all this? Seems like a perfect opportunity for him.
He came in.
After the fact. But I mean, during this build, he was in WrestleMania. Like, what's up with that?
He was available. Again,
Just
because we had been, during Jimmy Carter's, at odds with Iran. He was Iranian. So historically in the business, the foreigners were the heels. Iran and Iraq are right next door neighbors. They were both viewed as heels.
But he
was brought in.
But he wasn't involved here, though, is what I'm saying. Why would
He was. That's when he came in. Right after WrestleMania, he was there. That night.
Why wasn't he there at WrestleMania, though?
He was there at WrestleMania. He was. He was there that night. We shot stuff with him after the event. That was a springboard for him.
Beep wrote that the WWF wanted to send Hogan to visit the troops, but the USO turned it down. And then a week later, the WWF responded to a newspaper report, The National, and said the USO wanted Hogan, but the Defense Department nixed the trip, and Meltzer admitted he got it wrong. What really happened? Around this time, building WrestleMania,
you're getting into now the whole situation, why we changed from the Coliseum to the arena. And the USO did want Hogan, and they did want us to come and do it. There was a lot... After Royal Rumble, the night of the Royal Rumble, I believe it was January 19th, 91, is when we declared war. That night, during the Rumble itself, George Bush gets in during the Rumble and declares war on Iraq. Right about the time Sergeant Slaughter is winning the WWF Championship. So, we're in it.
Right.
We're in it.
Right.
And it's kind of hard to just say, okay, let's just change plans right now. We're in it. And we don't know how long this war is going to last. We don't know what all the hell's going on. And the entire country changes. They're talking about canceling the Super Bowl. They're talking about just how in the hell are we going to have any public assemblies? We were getting, contrary to popular beliefs, as I got all over my Twitter about, well, you didn't really have bomb threats. Yeah, we did. We had bomb threats pretty much every night where Sergeant Slaughter appeared for live events. We had bomb threats in the buildings. Sergeant Slaughter had to travel with a bodyguard. He wore a bulletproof vest to the ring every night. That's how serious, that's how real it was. People were coming to Sergeant Slaughter's house and threatening his family. That's real life. That's what we did. And Sarge was so committed to, again, the character and the entertainment, you know, he continued to play that role and play that character. And is you know, we're in it. You know, we're there. But when we were getting closer to it, we're looking at a stadium with 100,000 seats, wondering how the hell are we going to fill it? But then there was a bigger question. How the hell do you secure it?
Right.
It wasn't a dome stadium.
Right.
If you've ever been to the LA Coliseum, you know that it's pretty much just open, and there's, you know, ticket counters and entrances into the thing that are right next to the stadium. So there's no cage and gate or anything around it to really secure it, like there are with stadiums and that you have now. There was no way to secure the thing. We request with the FBI, Secret Service, the United States government saying, okay, we've got this event, and they're talking about canceling the Super Bowl because we're at war and they're afraid of retaliation in a big event with a lot of Americans in one place. They're saying, well, we can't secure it. So they go ahead, they make the decision. They're going to do the Super Bowl at a cost of millions upon millions of dollars. They come back to us and they say, well, in order to secure that area, this is what it would cost. And they wanted us to pick up that tab.
How much was it?
It was a lot. It was like, millions of millions. Because you had to build a perimeter. You'd have to build a fenced perimeter around the thing that didn't exist. In addition, you would have to do screening stations, you know, metal detectors and everything else. Plus, you got an open air above you. So you've got to secure the skies above the stadium. And it just was completely cost prohibitive. So to all those who say, oh, that's not the real reason you didn't draw. No, we had to make a decision, a real life decision. Would it have drawn? Probably not. Probably wouldn't have sold it out or even come remotely close. But we had to make a decision where we had sold more tickets than could fit in the arena.
Oh.
Okay, and we had to make that decision to go there because the event had to be in L.A. Probably didn't have to be. We could have changed all that, too. Changed all our advertising and gone somewhere else. We could have, should have, could have, would have, all that crap. But we didn't. And we moved into an arena that's 12,000 seats, and we had a lot more tickets than that sold already.
16,158 is the attendance that I see.
Okay.
Just saying.
All right, listen up. We've got great news. We're excited to announce a new affiliate partnership with Fanatics and the WWE Shop. It's an easy way to support your favorite podcasts. Shop official WWE gear and apparel by using our special URL, shopwrestlingmerch.com. That's shopwrestlingmerch.com. Or if you're watching along with us on YouTube, just hit that QR code that's up on the screen right now and check out the description below for the link. We'll have it up on all of our socials as well. But you can shop with confidence for your favorite WWE superstar. Tees, hoodies, caps, championship belts, and more with the WWE shop. And don't forget to use our special link, shopwrestlingmerch.com. Not only do we get some great deals and some great swag, but it's also an easy way to support the show. That's shopwrestlingmerch.com.
So, look, a couple things. I'm a business nerd. When you have to change venues like this because of the extenuating circumstances, I assume you guys had already put down a substantial deposit, or there was substantial money already outlaid to the Coliseum. Do you get any of that back? Or do they understand, hey, it's a war?
Coliseum wanted us.
So you didn't pay for that?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. But it does cause a logistical nightmare because you had seating set up and numbered based on what the Coliseum would be.
Yeah.
And now these guys have paper tickets. Fans have paper tickets.
Yep.
And some of those sections don't exist, and they don't have that many rows, and they don't have that many seats, and the sections are numbered differently. Everything's different. Nobody really, I would imagine, knows what the hell's showing up at the ticket turnstiles.
No clue.
And what are you telling ticket takers? Just, hey, if it looks legit, just fucking take it.
They had a plan. I mean, they had a plan, and there was an exchange plan, I believe, in place. But, going into it, we didn't know.
Right.
And I want to say we had someplace close where we had closed circuit stuff going on if we just couldn't fit people in. But it was a nightmare on every avenue. And sometimes you just got to suck it up and go for it. We sucked it up and went for it. And everybody can sit back on Monday morning and criticize us, but nobody else was there to make those decisions at that time. And it's real easy to sit back now and say, well, you should have canceled the show. You should have done this. You should have done that. That would have cost probably more money than anything else. Sometimes the show must go on. And
give me an idea of, you guys announced this, I think, in February that you're going to be changing venues. You go from 105,000 seats to 16,000, and you'd already sold thousands of seats. There's a debate over whether or not you'd sold more than 16,000, whatever. What number do you think was realistic had you not moved it? Let's assume that there wasn't a security threat.
that's impossible to say.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay, well, just guess.
I don't know.
If you had sold, all right,
Only 100,000, not 105.
okay,
Or actually, it was scaled to 107,000. But
you're 6 weeks out from the pay-per-view. You've been selling tickets for a while. You're 6 weeks out from the pay-per-view. You've sold 20,000. Let's just call it 20. It holds 105. What do you think was realistic? We just talked last week about the walk-up on Eddie's show.
if we didn't go to war,
However you want to answer is fine.
if we didn't go to war, we probably would have done 40 or 50,000.
And if you did go to war,
I don't think you would have sold too many more tickets. Really, I don't think people were so paranoid at that time.
no, that's fair. That's fair.
About going to any public event, people were scared to death to go to the Super Bowl.
40 or 50,000 is a more realistic answer.
Do you have any idea how many planes they had patrolling the air above the Super Bowl?
More than one.
Exactly, a lot. And again, the government picked that up. They weren't picking it up for us. So the NFL didn't pay for that. That was, we're gonna pick this one up and secure it for the good of the country.
Well, the war was over by the time the event happened, but you wouldn't have known that in February when you moved it. I get that.
Impossible to know. Impossible to know that we were going to war when we booked it.
You told me an interesting story about lighting at the Coliseum. Can you share that?
The world's longest truss. Our lighting director was a gentleman by the name of Ferd Manning. Ferd Manning was a great lighting director. But Ferd lit the I Love Lucy show and worked at Desilu Studios. And Ferd knew one way of lighting, hard lighting, and you set your lighting and you have big lighting trusses and you have lots of lights on them and you set them and kind of forget them. Ferd was going to build the world's largest and longest lighting truss. It would have been almost 200 yards in length to run the entire length of the LA Coliseum. And I never forget, Vince was like, they're building what? And abort that, and started designing just the stanchions that they still use to this day to go above the ring and not run a truss from end to end.
Which is pretty outstanding.
It's crazy.
It is crazy. But
It's crazy.
What would you have done with it after? Can you imagine that in the warehouse?
Can you imagine how long it was going to take? There was a kicker. How long it was going to take to set the damn thing up?
A week.
God forbid any heavy winds came by or anything else, and then take the damn thing down.
Yeah.
And then what do you do with it?
Yeah.
You got enough lighting and enough grid to light 10 arenas.
For 40,000 people. A lot going on around this time, just in general. How much money do you think this venue changed, cost Vince when it was all said and done? All things considered, $1 million, $2 million?
I'd say millions because, again, the state of the country was one of
Fear. Yeah.
And a great deal of patriotism, but it was a fear that our generation had never really experienced before. It was that unknown.
Do you think that the American public was turned off by this angle?
Yes.
Wow, I didn't expect you to say that, considering you're arguing so hard for it a minute ago. I asked because the February Saturday Night Main Event show drew the worst rating ever for the WWF on NBC, and I would kind of consider this to be the first major sign of a decline in interest.
No, I think people were definitely turned off by it. I think that there was a segment that loved it, but obviously the segment that had disdain for it, hated it, was much bigger. It was a different time, and when you're in a bubble, you make decisions in a bubble, and you don't necessarily, in many ways, we didn't live in that outside world. We were living in our world. We were worried about our stuff at that time.
Yeah.
Get the show, get the match in the ring.
Right.
And you're thinking about, well, all this other stuff, people are being killed. People are being killed all over the world. That was cold, hard, just fact. And it's different when all of a sudden, wait a minute, Jeff down the street, he went to war.
Yeah.
They lost their boy.
Sure.
That becomes a completely different scenario. And, from the Gulf War and everything we've done, when Americans are losing their lives and it's being reported in the media every day, and all of a sudden it hits home, you may not know them, but if it's somebody in your neighborhood or a friend of yours, it hits home, and it hits hard. So Americans were going through something that they hadn't gone through in a long time at that point since the Vietnam War. But that wasn't that was a crazy war we shouldn't have been in. And now we're declaring war, and we gotta kick their ass. We're Americans.
So at this time, the actual set and the whole theme is very Stars and Stripes. Hogan's wearing a star bandana. There's a drawing of Hogan, kind of like on Plymouth Rock, with the cartoon of him with the American flag. The perimeter of the building on the inside is just covered with the Stars and Stripes. Duggan comes out in the full Uncle Sam gear, just over the top. Is this to kind of counterbalance?
It was a theme. It was a theme of the world. I mean, it was a theme of America at the time. Everywhere you went was red, white, and blue.
Yeah, this is the first time that you started to see the yellow ribbons around the trees
Sure.
and American flags in a big way on front porches and stuff. And
It was a very patriotic time.
yeah. The war was actually over, though, by the time the pay-per-view happened. Does this seem like twice as bad of an idea now? I mean, not only now is it maybe in poor taste and maybe you've turned people off, but it doesn't even seem as timely to have an Iraqi sympathizer.
Timely's not, no, because I think that still people hated Iraq and hated Hussein and hated, any American turncoat. So to that, in the old way of thinking and being in that bubble, it's still okay.
It's been reported that this is the second lowest buy rate for a WrestleMania.
That wouldn't surprise me.
And one of the things that maybe was attributed to it, besides the angle and just America, but the price actually went up for this one. For 6 and 7, I believe, were the first times that it was $29.95 instead of $24.95. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
Do you think that extra $5 made a difference, or was it just people just weren't into it?
I think it made a difference. You go for the first, in its infancy, it was one price. Price hikes always make a difference.
Right.
While you may make the same money, if not more, you have less buys, you may still make more money. So that's how it's justified.
Hear this out before you shit all over it.
You and I are going to fight tonight.
Gorilla Monsoon, does say, and they drive it home a few times, that this is, the biggest pay-per-view in the history of pay-per-view. Hang on.
This.
I know. Hang on. Is that Vince trying to get that out there because he feels like the perception maybe that this is going to be a down show and he wants to kind of puff his chest out? This is coming when Mike Tyson is a big box office attraction. There have been really low ratings for their NBC special. They are taking a little bit of a hit PR-wise because of the angle. Does he want to kind of...
It was for PR. And it was for PR to go out and send it out to the troops and to send it overseas for free and provide it to the Armed Forces Network for free.
It's kind of like a make good of sorts. Like, hey...
well, it's not a make good. We've always supported that. They always supported the troops and did all that stuff. But here was a time when they're in a foreign land, a lot of them still.
Sure.
That let's do something for them. And they wanted it. So, okay, let's go ahead and send it over there to them. And it was something. It was entertainment. And give them something to cheer about.
There's no thought that this is going to counteract some ill will? That this is just a nice gesture to kind of counterbalance that?
I don't think that it was ever a case of, I don't think anything that the WWE has ever done with the military was, well, let's do some goodwill here. I truly believe, I know that everything I'd ever done with the military, I know everything Vince has done, John Layfield and those guys that they've done for the military isn't because, hey, this would be great PR. It's, hey, let's give back to the guys that are risking their lives for our freedoms and for everything here, and then feel very strongly about that.
Going back, though, to the original way I tried to talk about it was in regards to trying to not look like, hey, the company has slid, the company's fell off. Vince is famous back in the day. The rumors and innuendo would have you to believe. He flies guys up to interview them first class. He picks them up as a limo. He puts them in the finest hotel. He has them big-time show tickets. He rolls out the red carpet of sorts to give the perception that this is the big time. Well, if all of a sudden people are hearing ratings are down, buy rates are down, blah, 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 maybe there's a little bit of, has he taken some shots here? Is Gorilla pushing this is the biggest in history to let people know, hey, we're still a major player? Because 1990
I'm sure that's a big part of it, sure.
Yeah, okay. That's this is something that nobody talks about. But when you really look at what's going on around it, I can't help but wonder, are people taking their eye off the prize a little bit? Is that one of the reasons that business is dipping? Soon after this, Suburban Commando comes out, so Hogan's out making movies. Vince, the month before, had started the WBF. It seems like, wrestling is not nearly the focus that maybe it once was, whether we want to admit that or not. Hogan's making movies. Vince is playing bodybuilder promoter. It seems like there's a little bit too much diversification, and maybe one of the reasons business dips, and maybe the reason they stay the course with this angle as long as they do, and whatever, is because people are doing other things. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
what was the office's take when in the middle of all of this seeming catastrophe, we've got to move from this major coliseum, now we're going to a little arena, and oh, by the way, Vince is really excited about his new bodybuilding company.
I don't think people were happy about it in any shape of the. Yeah, people weren't really happy about it. No.
And if business is down, I imagine the paydays to the boys are down, and he's paying the bodybuilders guaranteed money, and the wrestlers aren't getting it. Is that fair?
That didn't come, I think, until like right towards the end of that when all that got out. Yeah.
But you were in the office, you probably knew.
Oh yeah.
And
it was bitter. There was definitely lines drawn.
Would you have had your ass on your shoulders about it, or would you have just kissed ass business as usual?
Well, it was for where I was at the TV studio. I was having to do stuff with the WWF, so for me it was business as usual and more stuff to do.
Did you think it was the shits?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
I mean, it would have had to have improved a lot to just be the shits, but it was horrible. It was horrible. It just was.
And it was poor timing. I mean, when business is trending down a little bit, and now we're going to look at doing other shit, like, wait a minute, let's pull the nose up, and then we can look at doing other stuff.
Maybe. Or like you said just the other day, maybe that's the time that you got to double down and go for it.
Yeah.
So Vince is a double down kind of guy. He's going to go for it. There is no right time. You know, a lot of times people will say, you know, well, I don't know if this is the right time. I don't know if, you know, maybe we should talk about this later. No, fuck it. It's the right time. It's time. Just do it.
Let's talk about the match. We've talked about everything but the match so far. There was a match. Hogan bleeds in the match. And is this? I don't remember Hogan bleeding a lot during this run. I know he bled at WrestleMania 2 against King Kong Bundy. Do you remember another time where he got blood in a big-time main event on pay-per-view at this point?
No, I don't.
You know, we fans have heard that Vince, you know, wrote a letter to Turner and called the practice of getting this blood barbaric. And I'm curious when I see this in a main event here, because it was a cool visual. I'll give you that. Would this have been a Vince call, or would this have been an agent situation where the agents
with Hogan, it was a Vince call.
Just out of curiosity, who would have been the agents at the time?
I have
not of the
agents.
Yeah, just make a list.
Pat Patterson, Jay Strongbow, Jim Myers, Tony Gurria, Dave Hebner. I don't know. I'm probably missing some, but
did Hogan have a favorite agent to work with?
Pat.
Everybody loved working with Pat. After the match, or towards the end of the match, it's not even over yet, Slaughter brings in the Iraqi flag, still on the stick, and drapes the Iraqi flag over him. Hogan jumps up, rips the flag up, starts hulking up, goes to the finish, and then starts posing. This is what everybody wants to see, I guess. But then Hogan, I thought this was kind of weird. Hogan wipes his bloody, sweaty head with the flag and then throws it into the crowd. Could you do that today?
I wouldn't. Just struck me as odd, you know. But again, I keep saying different time, different place.
Do you think the decision, I mean, obviously it was just on schedule and it just worked out this way. Suburban Commando was not this big, huge blockbuster hit, and it came out not too long after this. Do you think that the performance of that movie was hindered a little bit by this angle and this situation? Seriously, like, is there just
Did you see the movie?
Yeah.
So you think a wrestling match
Well,
affected how people viewed that movie?
Well, I mean, in terms of not going to see it at all. It was
okay, if 3 people went and saw that movie, that may have been enough word of mouth to say, maybe not the movie you want to go see.
Where do you rank Suburban Commando amongst your favorite Hulk Hogan movies?
Well, No Holds Barred is number 1.
No Holds Barred is the deal.
Yeah, it's probably number 2 because Undertaker was in it.
They made it for $11 million. It made $8 million, so it drew about as well as WrestleMania 7.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think all told,
still making money?
Do you think WrestleMania 7 was a financial success, given all the craziness with it? Maybe not the huge booming success people wanted, but still was, in the black.
Yeah, it's probably in the black, if not just break even.
Wasn't too long after this, you took a vacation. You want to touch on that, or are we going to save that for another day?
We'll just save that for another day.
Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. He's at Bruce Prichard. I'm at Hey, it's Conrad. And we'll see you next week on Something to Wrestle with Bruce Prichard.